The morning had started like any other for Leena, mundane, quiet, and wrapped in the comfort of routine. The kettle was whistling, her cat was curled beside her window, and she had finally settled into a peaceful rhythm after months of job hunting. But then her phone buzzed, shattering that calm. "Leena, I need you, please!" Her twin sister Maya's voice crackled through the speaker, thick with desperation. Maya was a part-time nanny, juggling odd jobs to make ends meet, while Leena had always been the organized twin, degree in literature, clean apartment, structured life. But behind her order was emptiness. No job, no family of her own, and no direction. "What happened?" Leena asked, already sensing the chaos. "I got the audition call. The big one. But I can't cancel on the family. I've been working for them for months. Just one day. Please, just go in my place. His name's Mr. Carter. He's a single dad. It's an easy gig. I'll send the address." And just like that, without much thought, Leena found herself standing in front of a towering modern estate an hour later, the kind of house that looked like it belonged in a luxury magazine. She almost turned back, clutching her thrift store, coat tighter. This didn't look like a place that would hire Maya, let alone mistake Leena for her. But then the door opened, and everything changed. The door creaked open, revealing a man in his mid-30s, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a fitted charcoal sweater and black slacks. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing a gold watch and the kind of forearms sculpted not just by gym hours, but by responsibility. His hair was slightly tousled, and his eyes, piercing blue, studied her with calm scrutiny. "You must be Maya," he said, offering a polite nod. "Come in. Ava's upstairs." Leena opened her mouth to correct him, but the words lodged in her throat. There was something about the man's presence, gentle, commanding, and broken. She couldn't place it, but behind his quiet demeanor was a sadness that tugged at her instinct. She stepped inside, awestruck by the sleek, modern interiors, art-lined, hallways, and the soft scent of vanilla and wood polish. She followed him into the living room where everything was meticulously organized, no sign of toys or mess. "Ava's 5. She just lost her mother last year. Be gentle," he said, his voice catching for a moment. That explained the loneliness in his eyes. "Of course," Leena whispered. As he disappeared upstairs to get the child, she walked toward the grand piano in the corner. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She hadn't touched one in years. Before she could resist, she pressed down softly. A single note echoed, and behind her, a tiny voice asked, "Do you play?" Leena turned to see the little girl, delicate blonde curls framing her porcelain face, clutching a stuffed elephant. "A little," she smiled. "Do you?" Ava nodded and walked over, climbing onto the bench beside her. "Mommy used to sing while I played." And just like that, Leena forgot she was pretending to be someone else. She sat beside the child, played a soft melody, and watched Ava's shoulders relax. She had no idea that behind the glass wall, Mr. Carter, Noah, was watching everything unfold. And for the first time in months, he smiled. The day unfolded with surprising ease. Leena had expected a long, awkward slog through unfamiliar responsibilities, but instead she found herself completely at ease with Ava. They baked cookies, burned the first batch, but laughed so hard it didn't matter. They painted watercolor animals on the patio, with the child splattering more paint on Leena than on the canvas. At one point, Ava asked if she could braid Leena's hair, and as tiny fingers fumbled through her dark locks, Leena felt something she hadn't in a long time. Warmth. Connection. Ava's laughter was infectious, a melody of innocence, and Leena found herself dreading the moment her sister would return and end this strange, beautiful illusion. Meanwhile, Noah Carter lingered in the shadows of his own home, watching in quiet astonishment. Maya, at least who he thought was Maya, had never shown this kind of affection or effort. He had hired her for convenience, not excellence, but this woman was different. She didn't just watch Ava, she saw her, spoke to her with patience, cared for her like she mattered. After lunch, Leena sat on the floor of the sunroom, surrounded by stuffed animals and picture books. Ava had curled up beside her, thumb in her mouth, beginning to drift asleep as Leena softly read a story about brave rabbits and magical meadows. Her voice was calm, melodic, soothing. Noah entered then, quietly, and stood at the edge of the room. "She hasn't napped in weeks," he said, voice soft. "You must have some kind of magic." Leena flushed, startled by his presence. "She's an amazing kid. I just listened." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, curiosity, admiration, maybe even recognition. He looked as though he wanted to say more, but hesitated. "Would you stay for dinner?" he asked. "Just to keep her routine going. She's never taken to anyone like this." Leena hesitated. The right thing would be to say no. Her sister could be back any moment, and the longer she stayed, the harder it would be to explain the lie. But Ava stirred beside her, one tiny hand clutching Leena's fingers even in sleep. "Yes," she said, almost in a whisper. "I'd love to." And just like that, a single day began to feel like something far bigger, a beginning neither of them had seen coming. Dinner was a quiet affair, but not in an uncomfortable way, in a gentle, almost sacred sort of way. The dining room, framed by tall windows that let in the amber hue of dusk, shimmered with soft light. Ava sat between them, giggling over her macaroni art project, while Leena helped her cut tiny cherry tomatoes. Noah had ordered from a local, organic bistro, and everything tasted like it had been kissed by sunlight. Fresh herbs, warm bread, roasted vegetables, and tender lemon-glazed chicken. As they ate, Leena found herself watching Noah more closely. There was something in the way he looked at Ava, this fierce, protective love, and in the way he snuck her extra cheese when he thought no one was watching. He wasn't just a father. He was trying. She respected that deeply. "You're very good with her," he said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "I don't think I've seen Ava this calm since before her mother passed." Leena looked down, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't Maya. She had no right to accept the compliment. But something in her chest ached, because the warmth, the laughter, the bond she felt with Ava, it wasn't pretend. "She makes it easy," Leena replied quietly. "She's a very special little girl." "Her mother used to say that, too," Noah said, voice dipping into a softness that betrayed his grief. "Samantha was the light of every room. When she died, I thought I'd never feel light again. Ava hasn't been the same either. I've tried everything, doctors, therapists, nannies. You're the first person she's actually played with since—" He trailed off, his fork resting still beside his plate. Leena reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his. It was bold and possibly foolish, but it felt right. Maybe she just needed someone to see her, really see her. Their eyes locked. His gaze wasn't one of a millionaire who was used to getting what he wanted. It was of a man drowning, grateful. Someone had finally reached into the water. Leena's heart thundered. She wanted to tell him the truth about who she really was, how this day was a complete accident. But the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Not while Ava clung to her side like a lifeline. Later, as the stars winked, alive, and Ava fell asleep in her arms on the couch, Noah brought a soft blanket to drape over them. "I hope you'll come back tomorrow," he said, voice low, almost afraid. Leena looked down at Ava's sleeping face, then up at the man whose world had quietly opened to her in just a few hours. She nodded. "I think I'd like that." But neither of them knew that Maya would return the next morning, and with her, the truth that would shatter everything. The next morning dawned with a kind of deceptive peace. Sunlight spilled through the large bedroom windows as Leena stirred awake in the guest room, still wearing the same clothes from the day before. She had planned to leave after Ava drifted off. But Noah insisted she stay, saying the roads were slick and the house had more rooms than they knew what to do with. And Leena, still wrapped in the warmth of connection and confusion, agreed. Now, brushing her hair in the mirror, she felt a tightening in her chest. She had to tell the truth. The longer she stayed silent, the deeper the lie dug in, and the harder it would be to escape. Ava's knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Can we bake pancakes like yesterday?" she asked with bright, hopeful eyes. "Of course," Leena said, brushing the child's cheek with her fingers, already aching at the thought of leaving her. Downstairs, the kitchen buzzed with warmth, music playing softly, Noah pouring coffee, Ava mixing batter with a spoon too big for her hands. Everything felt right. Until the doorbell rang. Leena froze, instinct already telling her what her heart didn't want to admit. She turned slowly as Noah walked past her to the front door and opened it. There stood Maya, makeup smudged, hair in a messy bun, wearing her interview dress that Leena knew too well. She looked exhausted and confused. "Maya?" Noah's voice was puzzled. "But you're already—" He turned toward the kitchen just as Leena stepped out, apron dusted in flour, eyes wide, heart pounding. "I can explain," Leena whispered, but her voice was barely audible. Ava ran to the doorway, arms wide. "Look, Daddy! There's two of her!" she squealed with a child's innocent joy. But Noah wasn't smiling. He looked between the two women, his brow furrowed, jaw clenched, and then fixed his gaze on Leena. "Who are you?" The question cut deeper than any accusation. Leena felt her breath hitch. "My name is Leena. I'm Maya's sister. She couldn't make it yesterday and asked me to come instead. I didn't plan to lie. I was only supposed to stay for one day." "And yet you're still here," he said, his voice calm but distant. That hurt more than yelling ever could. Maya stepped inside, watching with disbelief and frustration. "You stayed the night? What were you thinking, Leena?" Leena wanted to defend herself, to explain that she hadn't meant to fall into this place, hadn't meant to fall for this little girl or the grieving father who made her feel seen for the first time in years. But she stayed silent. Because no matter how innocent her intentions, the truth was, she had deceived them both. "I should go," she said quietly, looking at Ava last, who now stood behind Noah's legs, confused and frightened. "No," Ava whispered. "Don't go." That broke something inside her, but Leena turned anyway, walked out without another word, feeling as if she had just left behind not only a home, but her heart. The house felt colder without her. It wasn't something Noah Carter could explain out loud, especially not to himself. But the silence that followed Leena's departure echoed in every hallway. Ava, once again withdrawn, barely spoke that morning. She picked at her food, refused to play piano, and when Maya tried to read to her, the little girl quietly slipped away to her room and shut the door. Maya, oblivious to the bond that had formed in her absence, just shrugged and muttered something about kids being weird. But Noah knew. He had seen it. He'd watched his daughter's eyes light up for the first time in a year. He'd watched her laugh, sing, braid hair, fall asleep in someone's arms. Not just anyone's arms, Leena's. And it wasn't just Ava who had changed. Noah had too. In those hours, that one unexpected day, he had felt something lift inside him, something that had been buried with Samantha. He had allowed himself to look again, to feel again. He had let a stranger touch his life and didn't even realize. He had hoped she'd never leave. He tried to distract himself with work, but nothing helped. Contracts blurred. Phone calls irritated him, and even the house staff noticed his short temper. "You okay, Mr. Carter?" his driver asked gently as he waited outside the estate gate. "Just drive," Noah muttered, waving him off. But later, that night when Ava crawled into his bed crying, whispering, "Daddy, I want her," he finally broke. Holding his daughter, he realized that what they'd lost wasn't just a helping hand, it was a chance at joy, at healing, at a family again. The irony was unbearable. He had trusted her without even knowing her name, and yet she had given more of herself in 24 hours than most people ever did in years. He tried calling Maya the next day, asking for Leena's number, but Maya refused. "She's embarrassed. She thinks she ruined everything." "Maybe she did," Maya said coldly. But Noah wasn't convinced. He saw the way Leena looked at Ava, heard it in her voice when she read bedtime stories. He knew lies when he saw them, but that wasn't one of them. That was a woman trying to do the right thing, even when it hurt. So Noah made a decision. He canceled his meetings, got in his car, and started driving to every bookstore, every coffee shop, every community piano recital in the city. He didn't know what he'd say if he found her. He didn't even know if she wanted to be found. But he knew this much. Some people enter your life for a reason, and some people, you don't let them walk away, not without fighting for them. Leena hadn't returned home for 3 days. She couldn't. Her apartment, once her sanctuary, now felt suffocating with guilt and longing. She had booked a room at a modest bed and breakfast, 2 towns over, hoping the distance would dull the ache in her chest. But it didn't. Nothing did. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ava's tiny hands reaching out, heard her whisper, "Don't go." And every time she inhaled, she caught the scent of vanilla and old wood. Noah's house, the house that had felt like home even though it wasn't hers. She spent her time wandering, parks, thrift stores, quiet cafes. She told herself she wasn't running. But the truth was plain. She was hiding. From her shame, from her feelings, from a man whose eyes haunted her more than she cared to admit. On the 4th day, while walking past a dusty old music shop on a quiet street, she saw a familiar shape through the glass, a grand piano. Something pulled her inside. The elderly shopkeeper greeted her with a nod, then left her alone. She sat on the bench, fingers trembling as they brushed the ivory keys. Music had always been her language when words failed. And today, her soul screamed to be heard. She began to play, not a song she'd learned, but one she felt, soft, aching, full of memory. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't stop. Because with every note, she remembered Ava's laughter, her sleepy smile, the way she clung to Leena's side like she belonged there. And then she remembered Noah, the way his voice dipped when he talked about his wife, the way he smiled when Ava braided Leena's hair, the way he looked at her, like he hadn't seen light in a long time, and suddenly she was sunlight. A tear slipped down her cheek and landed on the keys. She stopped playing, heart pounding. What was she doing here? Really? She hadn't just filled in for her sister. She had stepped into someone else's life and tasted what it meant to be part of something whole, and it had broken her open. She closed the lid gently, stood up, and turned to leave. That's when she saw him. Noah stood by the entrance, not moving, not speaking, just watching. His expression unreadable, a mix of sorrow, wonder, and something else she couldn't name. Leena's breath caught. How did you find me?" she whispered. He stepped forward slowly. "Ava told me to follow the music," he said, voice low, cracked. "I didn't know what that meant. Until I heard you." Leena swallowed hard, guilt and love crashing in her chest. "I'm sorry," she said. "I lied. I never meant to hurt anyone." I was only supposed to stay one day, but then you changed everything, he said softly, finishing her sentence. You brought my daughter back to life, Leena. You brought me back. She shook her head, voice breaking. But I lied. I don't deserve to be in her life. Or yours. You didn't lie to hurt us, he replied. You stayed because you loved her, because you saw her. And you don't get to walk away from that without giving me the chance to forgive you, without giving yourself the chance to stay. His eyes were filled with something so raw, so real, that she almost crumbled on the spot. But then he held out his hand. Come home. For a long moment, she stared at it, trembling, terrified. But when she took it, her heart knew. It had already been home since the day she knocked on that door. They didn't speak much on the ride back. Some moments don't need words. The hum of the car, the occasional glance, the way their hands brushed lightly in the center console said everything words couldn't. Leena stared out the window, watching the world pass. But all she could think about was Ava, how the little girl would react, whether she'd be angry or confused, whether she'd still reach for Leena the way she had before. Her heart twisted with anxiety. But when they pulled into the driveway, Ava was already waiting at the front window, her face pressed to the glass. As soon as she saw them step out, the door flew open and Ava sprinted across the yard barefoot, her tiny legs pumping as fast as they could. Leena! She shouted, voice trembling with joy. Leena dropped to her knees on the grass just in time for Ava to crash into her arms. She hugged her tightly, burying her face in the child's hair, tears falling freely. I missed you so much, Ava sobbed. I thought you were gone forever. Leena pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't want to leave. I made a mistake, but I'm here now. If you'll let me stay. Ava threw her arms around her neck again. Don't ever leave again. And in that moment, the pain of the past few days melted away. All that was left was love. Inside, the house felt different, warmer somehow, more alive. Maya had packed her things earlier that morning and left without much of a goodbye. There was no fight, no drama, just a quiet acknowledgement that what had bloomed here had never been meant for her. For once, she didn't argue. She simply said, "She needs you more than I ever could," and walked away. In the following days, Leena slowly returned, not just to the house, but to herself. She helped Ava with her piano lessons again. They picked flowers in the garden, made messy pancakes, and laughed like they'd never been apart. Noah, too, changed. He no longer carried the weight of grief in his eyes, though he still spoke of Samantha with reverence. He made space for both past and present, honoring what was while embracing what could be. One evening, as the three of them sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ava nestled between them. She looked up at Noah and whispered, "Is Leena part of our family now?" The question hung in the air like a soft prayer. Noah looked at Leena then, and in his eyes she saw no doubt, no hesitation, only quiet certainty. He reached over and took her hand. "If she wants to be," he said. Leena felt the air catch in her chest, the magnitude of the moment settling over her. She had come into their lives by accident, pretending, hiding, but what she found was something real, something worth staying for. "I'd like that," she said softly, "more than anything." And just like that, the three of them sat beneath the painted sky, a new beginning blooming quietly between them. Not perfect, not planned, but powerful and pure. A family formed not by blood, but by choice. And sometimes that's the most beautiful kind of all.